Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Carlos. How are you today?
Very good. It's Friday.
It is Friday, and we're ahead of at least here in the U.S. We're ahead of a short week coming up for the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yeah, I'm really excited this year. We're getting people again.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be getting people. I always that was one of my favorite holidays, even in Puerto Rico. We always used to bring the family, have some time together. Um, we used to like go to church together in the morning. So as a family, we were trying to do everything together. And the last year was like I'm like we're alone, like my boy, my wife, and myself, and we're like we need
I know
people.
it doesn't feel right, So that's well, and I mentioned last week that my son who's playing high school football. So for us, the difference this year will also be that in fact, I don't know what my wife, is a master in the kitchen, especially when it comes to coordinating all the dishes for Thanksgiving and the turkey and all that. But we've got a football game to go to because they play an annual football game against the big rival, the next town over, and have a big Thanksgiving football game. So I don't know how we're going to manage the schedule and all of that stuff, but we're having family over a couple days after on the Saturday. We're getting together with everybody and kind of doing that. So, but yeah, it'll be nice. It'll be nice to have people come together, to feel safe, to have a nice meal together and catch up with everyone.
It's actually also interesting how travel is picking up for
Hmm.
companies, not only for people. Like like we were talking before starting this session that I've been like traveling this last 2 weeks, and it's been very interesting because we have been connecting with other business leaders, and then again, it there's something different when you come together, your interaction, your connection, you understand the problem easier. You're not just like staring at the camera
Hmm.
and you don't know his computer like froze because they're looking attentive or the computer actually froze.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think we've all been in the Zoom freeze, but yeah, it's interesting because I see these articles, especially being here in Boston. They're writing about kind of the downtown Boston economy and how driven it is by the workers coming into the office buildings every day and talking about the return to work. And of course, for many of us, thankfully, our work wasn't really affected as much. We just where we did it, like we built up the home based studios and these kind of things to do this kind of work from home. So we never left work, right? It's where we're doing it that changed. But it will be interesting to see what 2022 brings and how people return to the office or not, and kind of how that affects it. But yeah, travel's picking up. I still haven't been on an airplane since February of 2020. So we'll see,
Wow.
when my first air trip comes on. But for now, I'm enjoying kind of getting things done and being able to still be here at home and drive to our office in Connecticut, right? Like that's an easy drive for me, a couple of hours each way, and or driving
Oh,
to
you're
the city
close to
here
the
in
Connecticut
Boston. So
office?
a couple
Well,
hours away. It's not too terrible. So yeah, I was there a
then we
few
need to
weeks
see
ago.
next time that I'm there.
Yeah, of
I was
course.
there this last week. So Mike, one thing that it comes, I don't gonna say often, but it's good to try to understand for business leaders that I never understood when I was only focusing on the tech.
Hmm.
Was this notion of CapEx and OpEx.
Hmm.
And it was not until I actually then move not out of technology, but managing then the team and helping then the partner or the customer understand how the services or solutions were priced or that they could purchase it, that I started then digging into it. And I thought that it would be a good topic for today because now that everything, as you mentioned, we're more remote, so the way that you buy the hardware have changed, the way where you host it, protect it, have changed. So understanding that will be very beneficial for our audience and for the leaders to understand how a partner or a customer think.
Yeah, I think it's a good point to consider, especially as people plan for next year. Uh, if we started a business today, if you and I decide to leave our fantastic jobs here at Datto and we go start our own managed service provider business, and we needed to set up shop for our team and the applications and computing tools that we would need, uh, we probably wouldn't buy a server and put it in a physical building somewhere where then we have to worry about the lights, the power, the security, the cooling, all those kind of services, right? In most cases, we would just put it in the cloud or leverage Microsoft 365, which is going to give us, file sharing, collaboration tools, productivity suite, all that kind of good stuff. All that we would really need is be, some laptops and internet connection somewhere, right? And then we could operate. The reality is, most people don't have that clean of an environment. They have some legacy business. They have offices like we were just referring to. Maybe those offices aren't being used anymore. Maybe they are. But planning the expenses and how you carry it, the two categories that you mentioned, CapEx and OpEx. So capital expense or an operating expense. Capital expense would be a one-time charge. You would carry those items as an asset on your balance sheet as part of the organization, right? You might have computing equipment as kind of one of the line items, or software if you bought perpetual licenses. And there's a depreciation schedule that goes along with it. So yes, you carry it as an asset. It's part of the assets of the organization, but there's also depreciation there because we all know computers, as soon as you buy them, the next, most up-to-date thing comes out. So CapEx is the one category. Operating expenses are those recurring charges, the things that we pay for every month, like electricity and, maybe a lease for the building that you're in, or if you own it, taxes, those kind of expenses that you pay on a recurring basis. And for a long time, computing was solely in the CapEx category. And now more and more, especially with cloud software and hardware and other things that can be paid as a subscription, now more and more it's falling into the operating expenses category.
And that's really interesting because then that from someone that used to focus just in managing the technology, and you relate buying a service with, let's say, your own money. Okay, so money come to me. So if I buy the computer, or if I pay that on the cloud, or let's say for that service, it's still my own money. So it should be the same pocket. How will a technology leader like yourself can help the audience understand that difference? Because for me, when I look at it, it was a little bit challenging. So let me get your point of view before I give mine.
Well, I think there's a couple of pieces to it. So first off, we are not uh, accountants. We are not tax professionals.
Correct.
So don't take anything that we say seriously in that regard, right? I think, you'd always want to talk to your tax professional. And if you're a managed service provider providing these kind of services to end customers, you could certainly talk to your accountant, and you should, because you're a business too, and you have these kind of operating expenses or capital expenses, and how you treat it from a tax point of view and what's deductible as business expenses and what's not, right? That's something that you and your accountant should be talking about, and trying to figure out a tax strategy that's going to make sense for your business. Similarly, your customers should be having that same conversation for them. Uh, Taking that stuff and putting it aside for a moment, what a lot of people look at is simply the upfront cost. So if I don't have to have the upfront cost in a big payment to buy a bunch of servers or to buy a bunch of routers or Wi-Fi access points and software and all that stuff up front, coming up with tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for all that up front, and instead I can build that into my operating budget as a line item, right? I pay a subscription fee for this, and there we go. The one comparison, which is not a realistic one, is like, what if your cable company came to you and said, pay for the next 3 years up front? Now, that could happen, right? I haven't seen those kind of plans, but they could come up and say, pay for it up front, and we're going to give you this kind of discount, right? Like if it's a big upfront payment. A lot of people were like, yeah, I could do that, but I would rather pay over time. Um, the most absurd example I can give just came into my inbox yesterday. I take my dogs to PetSmart to get their grooming and the bath and all that stuff. They sent me a thing yesterday saying you can prepay for 7, 8, or 9 haircuts now, or pay as you go. They offered a 25% discount if I did 9 haircuts on the dog, but it's only good for the one dog. You'd have to buy it for both of them. So you're talking about $1,500 I would have to pay to PetSmart today for cuts that are going to last a year. It didn't make sense, right? I'd rather keep my money with me, and because if I have a bad experience, and then how do I get that money back, right? And if I want to change, those kind of things. So there's a lot more predictability in kind of carrying something as an operating expense, not having the big payment up front, depending on the nature of the contracts that the different providers offer. Sometimes it's month to month, so it's very flexible. Like things change, I can shift out of that if I need to. Other times it's going to be an annual or sometimes 2 or 3 year term for more preferential subscriptions. But you have that predictability, so that you're not, in most cases, I should say, the most ideal ones are the ones that give you the predictability. Unfortunately, sometimes operating expenses, sometimes things have some variability, and that presents a different kind of challenge.
Yeah, that was the biggest piece for me to understand, because like you said, I'm like, okay, so why will I pay this month to month thing? Because I'm used to like getting, let me get it. I could do whatever. But I think that it make a lot of sense to understand that, and now migrating to the cloud, there's so many variables that
Hmm.
you actually needed to take care of when you're on an on-premise or a physical environment. That understanding how that now you can leverage it also for getting more business. Because before, this partner or this customer may say, well, I can't get that solution because I need to invest 5,000, 10,000, $20,000, or even millions, depending on what you're doing. But now it could be, oh, I can pay month to month.
Hmm.
Oh, I don't have to buy the whole thing up front. I could just, and by the way, that goes into a different bucket. Like you said, talk to your accountant, but that goes into a different bucket in how what my company is spending. Was an eye opener for me, and it should also be an eye opener for our audience, because now when we go into the cloud, we need to maintain some of the similar capabilities that we used to have on our on-premises environment.
Yeah, and that's where some expenses are probably always going to be those one-time CapEx costs. And again, your accountant will help you, tell you from a best practice standpoint. But maybe it is things like laptops, maybe those endpoint devices that people are carrying around because they're small, they're easy. Certainly you could lease that kind of equipment. Then I think you start thinking about things like a technology refresh schedule, right? So a lot of, like my wife works for a school district. She's carrying a brand new Surface it's not as new as mine, my Microsoft Surface, but she's got a nice Surface, and they have that on a schedule, so they're refreshing those on a periodic basis as part of a lease for the school district. Like, good idea, good plan, right? And kind of making sure that we don't fall behind, because it's hard with technology, right? As soon as the one purchase is made, new things come out. That's not really the problem for most people. Most users, it's the 3, 4, 5 years down the road, starting to try to stretch a device into year 6 or 7, those kind of things. Like the amount of memory it takes to run modern applications, right? It's you don't want to be left behind. So I think the benefit here is trying to get on a predictable schedule, trying to do things from a preferential tax basis, but then also being able to take advantage of the latest software that the industry has to offer. And so having the hardware and software and networking, right? If you think about what's happening in the networking category, there's plenty of networking devices now that have shifted from a capital expense to an operating. They offer you a subscription-based pricing. Adobe quite famously did away with perpetual licenses and moved everything into subscription-based plans, right? That's a big gamble that they took. I believe it's worked out well. I think that's the industry point of view on that. But there is a benefit to having that updated software and just automatically, like, I'm a big, well, you can see some of my photography on the wall behind me. I'm a big Adobe user from, processing all the images. I get a big update a couple of weeks ago on Adobe Lightroom, what I use for, doing all the image editing. So, to be able to get fresh features and things that you need and have kind of that ongoing cycle of improvements is really a big benefit for most organizations too.
We need to connect so you can show me a couple of tricks on Lightroom. I'm a Photoshop and a Premiere for like all the animation and the video and stuff like that. But Lightroom, I started getting into it because you can edit a lot of your pictures on the phone also.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
definitely when you mentioned that,
yeah, for
it's
me,
cool because that subscription.
yeah, I shoot, and in fact, I just got this is my newest toy. It's just beside me here. So my newest drone, if I get it in front of the camera, is the Mavic 3. Um, so this is got an amazing camera built into it, amazing battery life. But to be able to go up and fly and take some nice pictures, and then shoot in raw format, so you can bring it into Lightroom and do some editing, kind of make the colors really look great and really crisp. Yeah, it's a great tool. At first, I was kind of challenged. I didn't have any background in doing any kind of visual arts like that, but I picked it up. So I'm happy to share, of course, with you, my friend.
So interestingly, when you think about that, now someone that used to just buy stuff
Hmm.
now can create solutions that can be protected and expand beyond the original means. Because
Yes.
we all know that as a business owner or even as a person, um, we make X amount of money or that business make X amount of income. But if now I can migrate from having to buy everything up front, I can expand the solutions that I can use to manage my business. That could also open the opportunity for new services that that business can buy. And I like that a lot because while talking to different partners and industry leaders, is the idea that when I can now put that solution together as a holistic strategy,
Hmm.
then I can help the customer manage what they have, not in an individual way. Now I become that trusted advisor because now it's not just about, oh, I had to do this huge investment upfront. It's little things that they can be seeing every month and they can be added monthly, and then it become a recurring revenue. The model that Netflix did, and I always love that example, the Netflix model. I remember getting the original DVDs. I don't know if you had it.
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
and initially, when I got the DVDs in the mail, I'm like, how the freak are they making money?
Hmm.
They're sending me these DVDs. And like, what if I don't return them? But then like it was okay, so you get that, and then you get more, and then you keep. I've been a customer for Netflix. I don't know when they started, but I remember probably in like over 15 or 17 years.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
making me think because our oldest daughter turns 22 tomorrow, and I think of when we first had her, and I remember the apartment we lived in before we had the first house, and now we're in the second house.
yeah.
And I remember getting those red envelopes there. So we've probably been customers for more than 20 years. But you're right. It's the simplicity of those kind of models. Um, People bring those consumer expectations to work, right? This is stuff that, again, years ago, people wouldn't have thought this way. But now, if you're a managed service provider and you're going in and talking to SMB customers about this, and you say, hey, just like you get an electricity bill, just like you get an internet bill, we're going to offer you a service where you're going to get these services every single month. And we probably have, kind of a good, better, best plan, to offer you different levels of support and service based on your needs. But you're going to have predictability, you're going to have service levels. You're going to have all of that there. Build it into your operating expense plan. No big upfront commitment, right? You're signing a contract, obviously, but you don't have to put up a big bucket of money to get started, unless you need to get some refresh hardware, for the endpoints, those kind of things. But it gives the barrier to entry, or reduces the barrier to entry significantly for those small businesses, right? They can become a managed customer and all of a sudden start to reap those benefits. And then to the point you were just making, now I can come in and layer new things on top of that. As new things come into the stack, or as new applications or scenarios come in, I can bring those to my customer. They can add those to the things that they're doing. And so if my monthly billing was, X dollars per user per month, now I can do X plus something as I bring in additional things. And the customer is getting value from it, and they have the predictability and the costs, and all kind of the benefits come together.
So looking at that, one of the areas that I always had a challenge was understanding that, okay, I buy all these opportunities. Now, what do I do to make sure that everything stays up? And I used to have to build so many different areas and solutions and piecemeal. Okay, I need to get this from this area. I need to get this from the. I had to put them, and then they don't work together too good. Um, so tell me a little bit about how important for a business leader or an
Mhm.
owner is the simplicity that what they bring to protect or to for a solution that it will work out of the box.
Yeah, and I think a lot of to the issue that you raise with this question, um, there are a lot of tools out in the market for doing a lot of different things. Um, the Holy Grail, and there have been many iterations of this over the years. You and I are old enough to remember this stuff, right? Like this notion of a single pane of glass, is something that people have talked about for a long time. And in the Microsoft ecosystem, which again, you and I have spent a lot of our years in this industry around the Microsoft business, there have been different tools from Microsoft, from third parties, from others. This notion of having everything connect up into one interface, one dashboard, one UI, that I can manage everything from there, right? I can get a view of the world. I can connect all the applications. I can have all the remote monitoring, management, alerts, notifications, everything coming into one place, and then also the downstream control of all those pieces. Uh, it's important just from a work standpoint, right? From a work life, like even going back to Lightroom, right? Like that's the benefit is I can do everything that I can do to manage all my photography as well as doing a lot of editing all in one application. Like it's a great benefit that I don't have to spin out and use different tools to do those kind of things. So it's no different here. I think uh, part of what I would, if I were a managed service provider, demonstrate to customers, existing and prospective customers, is that um, the simplicity and the degree of control and management we have from the console and being able to keep all those pieces there should give them peace of mind, because you think, oh, they're selling me all these different services that are going to do all these different things. How will they know if anything's going wrong, right? Like, how do they know to be able to deliver the safety and security that they're promising? And I think showing the customer how you work, how your team works, how you manage all the stuff that comes in, because we know, like, Internet of Things, like, it's a very exciting area, but as you know, like, you think about the amount of the hard drives, or space in the cloud, that all of those Internet of Things, it's generating tons of traffic, tons of content, tons of data. What services are sifting through that to find the meaningful stuff that people, humans, actually need to pay attention to? It can get overwhelming quickly. And so I think that's part of the story, is that we always want to portray things as simply as we can to customers, because in the most part they're not technologists, right? Like they're business people focused on their line of business. We're supposed to be the technology experts. How do we make it simple and relatable to them and show them how we work and give them peace of mind so that they can focus on their jobs?
Yeah, and that's one of the keys to look at any investment. Doesn't matter if it's capex or opex. That it's a solution that number one allows the simplicity of managing deployment, that it will serve the customer's need and thinking about, hey, I lost something. How do I bring it back? I need to recover. I need to test. I need to protect. I need to manage everything a simple way. And I always think like, how can I make it easier? And I think that also, if your team doesn't need to learn or keep up with 50 different tools,
Hmm.
it's interesting because from a technologist, it's like prideful or it's good to learn a lot of things. Oh, I learned this one and I wrote this script in Python and this one and then all of a sudden, okay, how are we managing all those little things? When you grow up into your career, you realize that, okay, it's good that you know all these little things, but how do you simplify? You want to be able to go on vacation and not have to be stuck trying to troubleshoot something that you're the only one that knows about it.
Right.
So making sure that your solution is simple and that then it provides that additional level that in the event that there's a problem, you know that you can solve it right away. When I learned that from a technology standpoint, I could start architecting and then communicate that value to the business leaders in a different way, because it was no more talking about that this feature is great. Is how will I gonna help you sleep better at night? How would, if something happened to your data, to your system, to your building, you're gonna continue operating in the smallest amount of time. And I think
Yeah.
that's very important to understand.
Oh, yeah, and I think that it's having technical conversations with technical people and business conversations with business people too, right? So it's separating those things because there's a level of detail that how the sausage gets made from a technology standpoint that a lot of business customers just don't care to understand. Like, hey, that's why I have you here, right? They'll say to especially a guy with your skills, right? Like, hey, you're here to worry about the technology side of it. We want to be able to focus on the business. The most successful people in this industry are the ones who can speak a little bit of both, right? And kind of bridge that gap, right? So if they're sitting in a meeting with a guy with your technical skills, and you speak the business side very well as well. So, but other people who don't, right? It's like the ability to kind of explain it in business terms, but also the technical is incredibly valuable because that does let the customer know they can focus on their pieces, but they also understand the capabilities so that when the time comes, something will happen to one of their computers. Somebody will accidentally delete something. Somebody will move something. Somebody will do something. It's very human driven in a lot of cases. Uh, Unfortunately, someone will send ransomware to their company, right, or send some malware in on an email, and someone will eventually click on one of those things and release some nefarious code. Having the layer of protection to isolate and mitigate those risks, right, and kind of put it down quickly to be able to recover quickly. Setting up for an environment like that so that when something happens, you're going to be able to handle it is an important piece. And again, we all serve at the pleasure of the customer. We're trying to help them be successful, let them focus uh, on realizing their dreams and building a successful company with whatever they do, or school, or government, or whatever space they're in. And so I think the role of the technologist in kind of helping to advise them and make recommendations based on experience and based on the possibilities of what can happen and the probabilities of what can happen is a really important role.
And my friends, it's been awesome to see you. So we just drop in the chat a little blog article that we have. The key is that you always need to understand where you're going and what you're gonna offer your internal or external customers, understanding what they're thinking so you can solve their problem before they come up front and say, oh, this is a problem. That means that you know your customer, you know what they're going through. So in that way, you can solve their challenges. So, Mike, it's been awesome to see you again. Next
Same
week is
here.
Thanksgiving, so we're gonna take a break, but we will be back the first week in December because I don't know how much turkey I'm gonna eat, so I may pass out or I may need to go running starting on Friday after Thanksgiving. But my friends, has been awesome to see you, Mike. Awesome to see you, and we'll see you on our next episode.